Thank you for joining me for this webinar, The 5 Shifts You Have to Make If You Want to Beat Online Retailers. Now, who is this for? Well, this webinar is for any brick and mortar retail store owner who wants to grow their business using a customer experience formula proven to get the cash register ringing. If watching potential customers walk out of your store empty-handed makes you want to bang your head into a wall, well, then this 30-minute webinar is for you. In the next 30 minutes, I'll share with you a proven method that major brands pay me to teach them that skyrockets their sales without slashing prices. In the next 30 minutes, you'll see how to flip the tables on your competitors, even if they're online, by providing the one thing they, by design, won't ever be able to do. How to keep your brick and mortar shoppers returning in droves without having to slash your prices by 20 or 30% or even more. And how to stop being treated like a showroom for your online competition by compelling your shoppers to make a decision and buy before they leave your store. My promise to you, in 30 minutes, I'll have shared a proven method that'll transform your brick and mortar store into a profit machine without the hassle of endless trial by error. I'll show what's worked for the brands you've all heard of, as well as the smallest retailers. My promise to you is a concrete, simple system for competing with online retail bandits that completely transforms your store's profitability. Now, does this sound like you? Do you have customers coming into your store and taking up your employees' time only to then use their smartphones to buy from a competitor as soon as they walk out? Is your traffic down from last year? And was it down from the year before that? Are you afraid that your loyal customers are finding your products online for less? Do you stare at your financials, desperate for even a small amount of clarity around what you should do to grow your sales? Are you worrying about protecting your own job? Are you starting to panic that more shoppers are just looking instead of lining up at the counter to buy? Are you frustrated with how hard it seems to get employees, even family members, on board with a different way of thinking about your business? And finally, are you starting to wonder if you've made a huge mistake investing your time, money, and career in retail? Well, the real problem, you haven't made any of the shifts. And once you do that, your shoppers will be engaged with what you say, to the point they'll keep their smartphone in their pocket. The store traffic you do get will convert from shoppers at a much higher rate. You will generate 5, 10, or even 25% higher sales every month. You'll go to sleep knowing you have a plan to succeed, and generally you will simply just feel something different in your store. I bet you'd like to have higher margins, lower turnover, higher profits, and employees who can sell your premium items right now. But you can't have those things as it stands. So what do you do instead? Well, you distract yourself. Maybe you move around your merchandise or your end caps, or you champion legislation that's trying to limit online retailers, or you chat on a Facebook group about how awful it is to be you, or maybe you add more product lines hoping that something will work. Here's the thing. The threat is only going to grow from online bandits stealing your sales unless you are willing to change. Now, you may not know who I am, so let me just quickly run down with you. I'm the retail expert chosen by brands across the world, and they're as diverse as Hunter Douglas, Lego, Omega, and Tommy Bahama, all looking for how to create customer experiences that sell the merchandise. I'm the author of 3 books, including The Retail Doc's Guide to Growing Your Business, and I created retail selling systems for brands, franchises, and independent retailers where they increase sales as much as 23% within 3 months. And finally, I'm a motivational speaker to audiences of up to 5,000 around the world. Now, discovering the 5 shifts. I came to understand these when I took over a Western wear store in South Coast Plaza. It is the number one mall in the world with annual sales of over 1.5 billion. And they had promoted this guy who had never been in a luxury situation before and hated training. You know, the store was merchandised with sale tags everywhere. And while the store carried boots over $1,000 and many in the $200 to $300 range, this previous manager and his crew could only sell what was on sale and not was new or best. The average check was going down. And more importantly, employees were missing commission goals. Their turnover was high, and that average check kept making their sales go down instead of up at a time when demand was really going up. And at the end, that their salespeople were more inclined to try to just get rid of a customer by asking, "What are you looking for?" than for actually upselling or adding on. And when it came time to clock out, well, they were pretty much gone on the dot. Fundamentally, it was a culture that was broken. Now, by starting a daily sales training program, practicing with role play, and holding employees accountable to actually do the training, we were able to turn the South Coast Plaza store from a laggard to leading the 54 chain in sales. And instead of them crying the blues and feeling like they didn't have any money, we ended up getting the highest increase in sales from the number one mall. What I came to realize and understand throughout all of this was that the way the store was broken shows up again and again in stores all across the world. But while this was all the way back in the 80s, what's amazing is that the war with online retail has shined a spotlight on exactly the kind of issues they had back then. But with online retailers, these issues became life and death issues. And then I realized that there were really 5 key shifts that a broken store needs to make, and that's what I'm going to share with you right now. First off, let me make something very clear. You will never be able to compete on price. There's always somebody cheaper. Always. Whether that is a competitor down the way, an online retailer, eBay, Craigslist, any of a million other ways you can buy it. And a lot of times we have taken the idea that everything is about low price, but for example, this guy is expecting to get a winged griffin on his shoulder, and I don't think he's going to get that. You know, there's always somebody cheaper, and I always say, you know, they know what they should charge because it's not worth very much. And if you're looking at this as a commoditized group of products that you may carry, you're going to have to find a way to make it different in your store, because brick and mortar stores have costs online retailers don't. You won't ever be able to beat somebody online on a price and stay in business. Look, here's some points. You take a gamble buying merchandise from newer manufacturers, which may not sell as well as your tried and true. If you're trying to offer free shipping and free returns, you're not powered by a stock option plan or from investors who are going to turn a blind eye. You have employees, you have customers who are using your products and then returning for money back. And then we have showrooming. They're coming in, getting all the information they can off of your displays to feel and touch it, and then buy it from somebody else, robbing you of that necessary product sale to keep the lights on, and more importantly, for you to live the life that you should. And also, you're probably paying higher wages than you did a few years ago. And none of that's going to really change, because every SKU bought online is one less they're going to buy from you. And it's one less reason for a consumer to get in their car and go shopping. I mean, think about it. Why would somebody go into their car, find their way through traffic, find a parking space, go into the store, and take several hours out of the day doing so when they could experience far less stress and lower prices online and still have their product within a day or two? I walked into a store in New York City, and as I opened the door, a woman asked me if I wanted a bottle of water. Now, this was in the dead of winter. It was 34 degrees out, and I said no. As I looked around their beautiful men's clothing, the employees gathered behind the counter eyeing me. While the brand's cashmere wool sweaters felt great, there was no one to engage me. They just stood there with their hands clasped behind their backs like some felon about to go to prison. Their beautiful windows had drawn me in, but this insular and these vacant salespeople left me feeling worse from having gone into the store. Now, this last summer, I walked into a store in San Francisco and was greeted within 10 seconds by a well-attired man. As I browsed around, I realized that they had casual menswear a few floors above me, and as I boarded the elevator, a woman joined me. On the way up, she asked me if it was my first time in the store, and I told her it was. I thought she was a shopper. She gave me a bit of this history, and then I realized, wow, she's a salesperson. We exited the elevator, and she gave me a quick tour of the floor, and then she asked what I did. We conversed for about 20 enjoyable minutes, and I left with several items I hadn't come in expecting to buy. So, what was the difference? Why did I feel worse in one store and buy extra items in the other? Because of the feeling I had in both situations. More specifically, the feeling I had in that second store. We falsely think as retailers we're here to simply conduct a transaction, but the internet's making this a colder world to live in, and we no longer have that feeling of human connection. The reason why I bought more and why my clients are able to increase their sales by 20 or 30% is because they do the one thing that by design online retailers won't ever do. They create a feeling that the customer matters. They get these results because they embrace the first shift. Shift number 1, people will buy more when they feel they matter. When a customer feels they matter as a result of a warm and enthusiastic and authentic human connection, they'll suddenly find themselves in an experience that they'll take with them for the rest of the day. And when I say enthusiastic, it doesn't mean rah-rah, but it certainly means approaching the other person in a way that this is what will make them come back and be memorable. Now, this might sound like a simple enough strategy, certain enough concept, but this training features 4 other shifts because of what it takes to ensure that any given retail employee can create such a feeling. In other words, you can't give shoppers a feeling they matter if you're just hiring whoever can fill a shift. Because the truth is that your best hires are not the ones with the best success stories. It may seem counterintuitive, but the most trainable employees have something else going for them. And it's something that you can train your manager to discover through the hiring process. Why is this so important? Well, if you don't train managers what to look for in a trainable employee, you're going to be stuck with employees checking out Instagram rather than checking in on your sales floor. And you'll give up even more market share to online competitors who use your store as their showroom. When a manager typically interviews someone for a position, what do? They might ask them about the duties the employee had at their previous job or what that past job was like. They might even ask questions about their past successes to determine how adept they are. But you know what? It might play out like the manager asking, so give me a time you gave great customer service, or tell me a time you went out of your way for a customer. The applicant then tells them. The manager then thinks, wow, they're awesome. Well, it might be so, but it's not really whether they've had past successes that you need to be looking for. I mean, everybody's had successes of some sort. That's why it's beneficial to ask about times they had a problem with another employee or didn't do a great job with a customer. But still, even if that is not the entire point, a trainable employee is able to think on their feet and be honest. If they dismiss your request for stories about when they were successful, or they avoid answering questions that highlight contrary situations, it often shows they're unable or unwilling to open up to you. And look, if they can't open up to you, when you have the leverage of them either getting a job they want or not, well, they're not going to open up to a customer or make them feel they matter. This is why it's important to not just ask them, when was the time you gave great customer service, or when was the time when you had a problem with another employee, but to add on what they thought the significance of it was. In other words, it's not their successes you need to mine out, nor their lack of success you need to reveal. The key to an employee being able to open up to your customers and give them the feeling that they matter is whether they have the capacity to reflect. And that brings me to the second shift. The most trainable employees can authentically reflect on their successes and failures. Look, trainable employees have a willingness to look inward, to be vulnerable to another person. They show in the answers to your questions in an interview how well they will craft an exceptional experience in your store. By reflecting on their past experiences, they're more capable of creating future ones. Does that make sense? And so you know that you must hire employees that help customers to feel they matter, but you probably won't be surprised to hear that it doesn't end there. While many customers seem to be fond of the competitive pricing offered by online retailers, price is not actually the main reason people aren't staying in your store. Recent surveys said 68% of the time customer churn is caused by customers' feeling of poor treatment, and 60% say they often or always pay more for a better experience. Now that tells us that the number one thing that puts off your ideal customer from even giving you a chance would be if they can't get someone to wait on them. The number two complaint is a perceived rudeness and indifference. But what is it that an employee will typically do when they engage with a customer? Usually, they'll just ask the customer if they can help them find anything, or if they've been helped. Now, shoppers rarely know exactly what they want until they look around. These well-meaning engagements, therefore, become little more than a single transaction. A customer isn't going to feel like they matter when every sentence is the same one the employee gave every other person and adding minimal effort. In situations like this, an employee has an opportunity to deliver an exceptional experience. I mean, what if, after the greeting and building rapport, an employee asks the customer if they're familiar with the store, and if not, could they show them around? Or what if they explained their process that would help the shopper to get the solution they're searching for? If you were new to a store, how would an opportunity to be briefly oriented to the store make you feel? Well, if you're like me and most other consumers who love to shop in a brick-and-mortar store, this kind of offer would allow you to relax, to put down your phone and engage with the human being who's helping you. This co-creating of a shopping experience is not only what will compel a customer to stay longer and return, it's the advantage brick-and-mortar retailers have. The ability to craft not just an experience, but a warm experience. This warmth comes from the third shift. People stay when they know what's going to happen. Once you engage with them and give them absolute clarity, they'll know exactly what is going to happen. People leave the store because they are overwhelmed with choice. When someone engages them right away and let them know what the experience will be like, they can relax and enjoy that experience. Not because they found what they needed, but because they were engaged. Their mind was in a different place than looking for price. You help them by explaining your sales process so they can let go of any tension about how their experience is going to unfold. Now, if you don't do this, your shoppers will continue to drift online rather than risk a bad experience. Well, they'll have no experience. And that means they opt out of discovering new products in your brick-and-mortar store. They tell themselves, I don't need anyone to wait on me. And they feel less connected and lonelier. Now, this was the problem that was faced by one of my clients, Marilyn. She owns Mac Fusion in Seal Beach, California, an authorized Apple sales and service retailer. But the problem was that her sales floor was filled with techs instead of experienced retail employees. What this meant was that they brought several issues to their interactions with customers, such as merely helping them to find what they thought they wanted, like a customer thinking they wanted an iPad, even if that wasn't the best tool for their particular needs. But we changed all that. We had them learn to initiate the interaction with the customer based on explaining how the store would help them to fulfill their needs, and make sure that the customer left with everything they needed instead of getting home and realizing they needed to return for yet another product. But the most significant shift came in a story that Marilyn described from her shyest tech. There was one young man who had previously helped the customers to shop with his own wallet. As in, if he couldn't afford it, he wouldn't present it to a shopper as an option, even if they could. But where Marilyn says that after he got past the wallet issue, there was no stopping him. In her words, she says, our shyest tech became our number one salesperson. This is because he learned how to ensure the customer understood what was going to happen, how their particular needs would be addressed during their time in the store. So we've covered the larger advantage that brick and mortar retailers have over online, which is to give customers a feeling that they matter. We have clarity around how to hire the right people, which is to hire those who have the capacity to reflect. And we understand what will keep customers at the store, which is clarity around what their experience is going to be like. Now, with the remaining 20 some minutes left, let's look at what are your employees supposed to do once the customer has gotten settled and is browsing around the store. I mean, are they to follow them around and continually ask if they can assist? Well, no, the simple truth is customers don't actually want your help when they come in the store. According to HRC, 95% of consumers want to be left alone while shopping unless and until they need an employee's help. But why is that? I mean, why might that be the case? Because what you might be thinking is, oh, people are afraid of getting an aggressive salesperson breathing down their throat. But what does that mean, really? I mean, honestly, when was the last time you found a pushy salesperson? I'll bet never. Oh, you might have found someone who talks about themselves over and over again, or some product knowledge expert who wants to vomit the same useless fact after useless fact. But a shopper fears engagement with an employee because employees typically just have a one-sided conversation that's all about products and not about the shopper's reason for being there. And they try to navigate product differences on their own. You know, you don't want an interaction to just be a associate mentally checking off boxes. Did you do this? Do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? Because that's pretty much what they could get online. In contrast, when there is an actual dialogue between a shopper and employee, together they come up with the best solution for the customer. That takes an employee who's trained to disarm wary shoppers with a greeting and is trained a process of how to engage a stranger and be curious. Rather than the employee asking themselves, what can I find them? They ask, why did this person come into our store today? Now, that first question, what can I find for them, comes from fulfilling a role. I'm just like a warehouse unit. What do you want? But what does the second question, why did this person come into our store today, come from? Well, curiosity. And that curiosity can lead to some amazing stories. I was working in a store in the middle of December and had both greeted and built a bit of rapport with a shopper. I spotted his jacket and I asked, that's a nice goatskin jacket. Was that a gift or did you buy it for yourself? The gentleman answered, oh, I bought it for myself. I then replied that I had hit goal 10 years in a row and had treated myself to a Scully jacket, which I still had on at that moment. I then asked why he was treating himself. He replied, well, the book that I wrote just got optioned for a movie. Have you ever heard of The Hunt for Red October? My name is Tom Clancy. If I never put myself out there to interact with Tom, I would never have made the connection, and he came back to my store several times. Notice how I showed curiosity, but I also inserted myself into the conversation. I also offered a bit about myself, so rather than just being a one-sided conversation, we went back and forth. We built rapport because we both showed up as people. I initiated with curiosity. I brought myself into it, and this led to a connection because we both offered something personal about ourselves. This is because of the fourth shift. The most meaningful interactions include stories in both directions. If employees only ask, how are you? Can I help you find something? Do you have a budget? Looking for something special? Those questions robs them of any sense of genuine connection, which then robs the customer of feeling like they matter. This, therefore, robs you of the add-on and the upsell. People who are left alone buy the cheapest, not the best. That means your best products sit until they go on sale, and that your employees will lead you to a vicious cycle of discounts and margin erosion. Is that happening right now? I bet it is. So how do you actually implement all of this? Because there's a rather sobering reality that you must and probably often have dealt with. By and large, training your employees doesn't work. Let's just stop and repeat that again. By and large, training your employees doesn't work. But here you are in a webinar, which in and of itself is a type of training. So clearly, I do believe in training. And to clarify, What I'm actually talking about that doesn't work is what nearly all retailers consider to be training. Unfortunately, many retailers look at training as something you do once, not ongoing. But the reality is that most of what we call training is merely exposure. Now, you know this yourself. You go to a meeting to listen to a speaker about a new process. The mind can only handle so much, so when you leave, you find yourself wondering what you are supposed to do. That's because you've only been exposed to the new process. For it to become second nature, it takes practice, role playing, and accountability. The difference between exposure and training is the difference between watching a ball game and being able to play it. I mean, look, you can understand from watching TV that when the bases are loaded and the ball's hit, the play is to first base. But until you've actually been drilled hundreds, no, thousands of times, until you as the player don't have to think about picking up the ball, thinking where to throw, and then executing it, you just do it automatically, well, you haven't been trained. You've been exposed, and you've understood it. But that's not what we're talking about. Your shoppers can't receive a feeling they matter from your associates until those associates have not just been exposed to great content, but also practiced, role-played, and most importantly, been held accountable to do what was taught. And the difference between training and exposure plays straight into the fifth and final shift, and that's this. Training will only shift a mind when its impact is automatic. This is where so many retailers miss. They may have a trainer trying to go store to store and train employees, but they can do little more than expose them to training. To go deep, to drill into exactly what the associate should do again and again takes practice. If they miss what they must do, they return to the learning to review taught again and again until they get it. They must be asked questions to measure their comprehension. Each employee must get the exact same learning each and every time. You don't want an employee to say, well, you don't have to know this, or I don't do that, or you don't want them to take a smorgasbord of things. Otherwise, you have a hobbled together program that's impossible to train, to hold accountable, and to duplicate. You must be able to see who's taking the training and who isn't, and get them back on track rather than let them limp along. Now, when this happens, the various techniques that we've explored today get baked into your employees so it becomes automatic. That way, the shoppers you spent so much money marketing to can actually become raving fans. Now, Paul LaPonte has been a sewing retailer in Washington for over 30 years, and he has 13 stores. His motto is that every employee is to find a way to say yes. He said the difference between a store that's succeeding and the store that's being mediocre is that the first store has sales staff who are constantly offering new product in a fun and engaging way to people. The other store is waiting for their shoppers to walk in and say, I'm in the market for a sewing machine, and if that's the way we sold, we wouldn't be in business. But he couldn't scale because there's just one Paul, and it was impossible to do one-on-one staff training. If he continued to rely on just him, growth would stall, team retention would suffer, and Paul would be exhausted. This is why he needed to create an automated forum for training his employees so that he could manage the process without training everyone himself. He engaged with me and my Sales RX program, and as a result of not just exposing his employees, but rather training them over and over again, role-playing and practicing and being held accountable, well, his stores had double-digit increases. So today, I promised to explore how to completely turn the tide to work in favor of physical stores by giving your customers what the online bandits can't, a level of customer care they can't hope to match, providing the one thing those cold online algorithms by design won't ever be able to do, which is to give your shoppers and your customers the feeling that they matter. I promise to show you how to keep your brick and mortar shoppers returning in droves without having to slash your prices by 20, 30% or more, which is to have trainable employees who are able to give your customers that feeling. I also promised to show you how to stop being treated like a showroom for your online competition by compelling shoppers to make a decision and buy before they leave your store, which is to create greater certainty with a more curated experience for them and engage them in back and forth conversation. I also promised you a concrete, simple system for competing with online retail and completely transforming your store's profitability, which can be implemented by not just exposing them to training, by actually training the employees regularly. You have a choice. Do you want to try to do this all on your own, or do you want to get help? I appreciate you joining me here today on this webinar, and I look forward to you taking the next step with me to get your employees trained in a scalable, actionable way that not only gives them the great knowledge, gives them the practice, you add the role play and hold them accountable, and well, you can compete. Thanks for joining.